Don Quixote and workplace roles. Don Quixote and workplace roles. What do those have in common? I'm going to tell you. Now, if you're not familiar with Don Quixote, I'm going to sum it up in 2 sentences. Okay? And then we'll tie it into the workplace because it's going to be a gooder. So Don Quixote was a novel written about 400 years ago. And it was about a guy who was like the lower class nobleman in his group who would read tales of romance and swashbuckling and all this kind of stuff. And he slowly lost his mind. And he got to believe that he was in those stories that he had read about. And he brings along his squire, Sancho Panza, along with him for the ride. Okay? How that works in the workplace is we all have roles. And one of the roles I find that usually fills up quick in the workplace is that of Don Quixote. And I'm not even talking about usually it's him running everything, but it's not. There's always 1 or 2 people on any staff you're at that will not only have a story that beats it, it's a situation where it was much worse. They were the hero of the story, and it was resolved, and they were lauded as heroes. Okay? We all know people in the workplace that have those stories. We all know people in the workplace that make up those stories, for lack of better terminology, right? I remember an old friend of mine used to always tell some of the weirdest shit imaginable in the workplace, right? Mainly around his love life, but still, people make up a bunch of stories like, oh yeah, well, anyways, before we get into that, workplace issues and Don Quixote. Hi, I'm Corey Rennie. I'm the unemployable counselor. Montreal Canadiens are still going for the playoffs. We're here just to talk on a very brief conversation about the workplace, which is something that I started this channel to talk about. And lately I've been thinking a lot more about those earlier days, and this is what we're going to do here. We're going to go with the workplace, individuals in the workplace, how to adapt with that. But this go around, we're going to look at some of the roles people play, right? There's always a dead mother. There's always, kind of like a scapegoat or someone always ducks meetings. But there's always a Don Quixote, right? Someone that maybe they've been there longer than you, or whatever the case may be, but they got every story that tops it, and they've slayed so many dragons and rescued so many fair maidens that it's a miracle that there aren't statues made to these individuals. That is actually a harmful impact to the workplace, because you have people that can't acknowledge or see their own faults, or even willing to admit that when they're wrong, situations will happen, right? Or people are speaking on other people's behalves, which happens quite a bit, and it's the same kind of thing. Oh no, we're going to do this, and this is what should happen, blah, blah, blah. And that's not the case, but they hide behind that illusion. It's interesting because the Don Quixote stuff, man, we've all had work environments, or I'm sure we've all can think of people in our head when I say, have you ever talked to someone who just knows everything, right? Is the hero, solve all these issues. And then later on you find out that's not the case at all, or that they're so full of shit, their eyes are brown, or whatever the fuck, right? But however you want to characterize that, but you realize, usually in quick succession, that things are not the way they should be. And the one thing that's impressive in the workplace is there's people that will commit so much to the stories that they will tell. And then when it gets found out, or when things cross up, they'll either completely shut down, right? Or they'll start begging for help, right? Or to people that can't help them. And it slips back into that ally building, right? Like even Don Quixote had a squire, Sancho Panza, right? Whether he believed it or not, he still enabled him to go on those things. And that's where it comes into play, where if you are a Sancho Panza to a Don Quixote in the workplace, you're the one who's going to get screwed there, not the other guy. Because the other guy is already going to, or a girl is already going to have that reputation that what they say isn't entirely true. So if you back that horse, you're probably going to get trampled for that. But that's just how you got to navigate those workplace dynamics, right? So like the Don Quixote part, everything is this epic quest, but you're going to bring it to justice because you're going to bring it to heed because you're the knight. You're you are the one chosen by God to go on this mission for the good of us all, right? Are you choking on the egotism there? But that's what happens. Nothing can happen because of me. I make this place run. I do this. If it wasn't for me, this would be nothing, right? Like it ties into it. You got allied buildings. Well, even Mando just who's bone down in disgust. Disgust, I say, right? But I mean, like, and they have people that will enable them, right? Panza to support that theory of whatever it is they're doing, even if it's batshit crazy. Like batshit crazy. I think, a good story would be where like if you're arguing for something to change, so the change happens, and then you immediately start arguing against that change, right? Like that. Like that stuff is just like, you know, it's like either you're a complete imbecile, I know, or you're just doing this just to be a not a very nice person, right? Or you just want to fight, right? And the thing that's tough is it's tough to maintain, friendships or relationships or, you know, there really needs to be a separation of church and state. I used to say that before, but I never really thought about it much. But now, it's anything that prevents the smooth runnings of whatever it is you're doing is a barrier. So, I mean, it's got to look at it from that perspective. But I'm just briefly summarizing some things that, perhaps may or may not be occurring in your workplace, right? This is, yeah, there's been a lot of good stories been told to me over the last few months about this kind of stuff. And I mean, in the Don Quixote analogy, I think fits. Because how do you deal with a coworker who has their own view of reality and they're not willing to accept any shred of that? How do you function with that? It makes it hard. You go along with it, and then if it goes south, often, like I said before, they'll escape anything because people just expect that from them. You know what I mean? It's like it almost gives them an out. It's like, oh, that person, that dog, whatever that it may be, is just a distrusting, dishonest asshole. That's just how they are. Why do they get an out? You know what I mean? But it's like, but you people, or this cat who handled itself, who tried to, have some integrity in the situation, must be shunned and beaten. Mob mentality, right? But I just find that kind of funny because oftentimes that's how it goes, right? Uh, but c'est la vie, such as life, right? You know, any yeah. But that's the cool thing about talking to people about their workplaces because you hear a lot of kind of stuff like this, and a lot of this is generalized kind of info from stories I've gotten. Um, any correlation or resemblance or to anyone living or dead or circumstances, organizations, I'm sure are purely just coincidental. And you're probably looking too much into it if you're thinking it's about you. Okay? But other than that, that's about it. Don Quixote, long ass book. It's about 410 years old. Miguel de Cervantes, I believe. But Google that one. Share this all over. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much. Fernando and I, the Chicken, the Montreal Canadiens, want to thank y'all for staying this far and take care, and we'll catch you on the flip side.